Alrighty, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Serving Nerve, where we talk about whatever we want, and today we're actually going to be going through Virgie Tovar. Yeah, if you don't know anything about Virgie Tovar, she is a fat activist, so we're going to be going through her, difference between body positivity and fat acceptance video. So let's just get into this and see where it goes. It's a bit of an older video, but it's something that I still pick fault with to this day. So, she's just a fat activist, basically. So let's just get into this. Alrighty, my people, I just want to interject that I do have a Patreon, and I do want to point out that if you want to support the channel, there is exclusive content on there, and I upload once a week. So yeah, if you want to check it out and support the channel, cool. If not, then let's get on with the video.
Hi, my name is Virgie Tovar, and I'm the author of You Have the Right to Remain Fat. In the book, I talk about the differences between body positivity and fat activism or fat liberation.
I know the screen is a little bit cut off, but it says 4 steps to improve the body positivity movement.
What I've found since body positivity has eclipsed fat activism is that positivity seems to be the biggest demand of the movement. The thing is that positivity isn't exactly a political resource. So it's important as we're thinking about moving forward as a political movement, what do we really want? And in fat activism, the demands are pretty clear. So far, Virgie Tovar has presented, you have the right to remain fat. Now, in my opinion, just on that general basis, without elaborating, being fat is your personal decision. If you want to be fat, you do have the right to be, especially in the Western world. You don't have restrictions on what you can be, what you can dress as, who you can be, how fat you can be, how thin you can be. There are very few restrictions regarding such. So if you find that there's some kind of societal pressure for you to not be fat, that's your own perception and issue. Overall, you do have the right to be fat, but will you want to be? The bigger thing I find is that people tend to appeal to futility when it comes to being fat, and they just accept themselves for being fat because they don't know anything better, or they don't know how to change for the better, or they find that it's too laborious for them to actually change. So instead they decide to accept themselves and appeal to futility instead of changing for the better and bettering their health and well-being, because it's easier. It's easier to cry about your problems or appeal to delusion or the ignorance that is your situation instead of actually changing and putting the work into changing, because why would you want to when you can just give up? In my opinion, I think that is what most people do when it comes to the body positivity, fat acceptance movement. A lot of people don't want to be fat. There's a certain point where it's actually dangerous, painful, uncomfortable, increases your risk of disease. There's a certain point where you being severely morbidly obese or severely overweight, there are these points that you're going to hit throughout these extreme weights where you're going to increase your level of suffering and you're going to decrease your level of well-being. So the reality is you don't want to be in these states of physical embodiment. You just tend to fall into them because you don't know anything better, or you don't know how to change for the better with the amount of effort that you're putting into it, or you just give up. That is my opinion. Now, when it comes to the entire concept of body positivity, the positive outlook that you might have towards yourself or be trying to garner for yourself, not being political enough, that is in some senses true because it's supposed to be a self-focus. The entire point of body positivity is not to be focused politically. It is more so to be an individualized perception of oneself, to increase their perception of happiness towards their body, or have a higher level of body neutrality instead of a negative view of themselves when they feel that they're inferior. To make it political will actually increase its likelihood of creating more discourse, not just for the individuals, but also for the public, who has to deal with the individuals wanting to be accepted on the basis of their body weight. Body positivity doesn't have that same focus. If they're going to be a part of a political movement, you need to know what the purpose, what the vision, and what the plan of that movement is.
So Virgie is actually going on about the fat acceptance and body positivity movement, and the body positivity element of that movement not being enough to perpetuate the political social justice group that is the fat activist movement. Now, I personally think it's quite bad to try and create a social justice movement out of everything, especially when it comes to something as health oriented and as individualized as a physical body weight. I think that it's fine if people want to live the lives that they want to live, whether they're underweight, overweight, whether they have really bad health or they're a normal weight, or they have really good health, or they live a healthy lifestyle or they live an unhealthy lifestyle. It is up to you, the individual. We have all had stints in our lives where we've done very unhealthy things, and we have also appealed to the futility in changing those things. Usually. A lot of us have struggled with some kind of thing like a vice, overeating, undereating, alcohol, narcotics, some other thing that we find that we can't quite break from, but when we do, we realize that there's better for us. But a lot of the time, a lot of people will never change. A lot of people really just like to live in their little bubble, and it might be a harmful bubble to live in, but at the end of the day, some people just don't pop that bubble. But saying that, when we get to a point of making everything a political movement and to be accepted on the basis of our body weight by the public and by society, we actually create a massive issue, especially when it comes to things like being severely underweight or overweight, because those physical embodiments are actually incredibly unhealthy for us. So if we get to be super morbidly obese and we want to be accepted by society and we create a social justice movement out of that, I think that's quite negative. It's the equivalent of somebody severely anorexic wanting to be accepted on the basis of their body weight because they feel like the system's belittling them or society belittles them. It's really bad. I personally think it's quite a toxic perception to have, but that's just me. I think it's also bad to force the public to accept you on the basis of your body weight or as a social justice group when it comes to the whole fat acceptance, body positivity movement. I think it should just be what it's going to be online. I don't think it should extend itself politically. I don't think it should extend itself socially. I don't think it should become some weird, social justice movement equivalent to that of other social justice movements, because I personally consider it a more petty and more unhealthy, not just social, but health-oriented movement. It's very unhealthy if you want to be accepted and live your life as a morbidly obese person, alongside have society accept you for the same thing.
The issue I have with body positivity is that the face of it becomes increasingly whiter, straighter, and thinner the more that the movement gains traction.
So you as a body positive individual or somebody who endorses body positivity, if you're, too white, if you are not fat enough, if you are, you're not queer enough, if you aren't oppressed enough, or if you aren't fat enough, then you are, not supposed to be the head of the movement because that's bad. That's bad as a social justice movement. I think that's actually really toxic because that can also create the opposite issue where now this is not a movement for everybody. Body positivity is not a movement for everybody. You want it to be exclusive to your specific group of individuals, whether it has something to do with body weight, being fatter, certain races, sexual identities, political identities, which is bad because the entire concept of body positivity is supposed to be accepting all bodies, no matter their flaws, accepting all bodies, not just on the basis of being thin or fat or whatever, but accepting all bodies for what they are and what they encapsulate, which is your humanity and your body. And, you should love your body no matter what. So when we take this whole fat acceptance, body positivity movement into a more social justice respect, and we find that there are individuals who are hijacking your movement that aren't oppressed enough, then we create this issue where now you're gatekeeping your movement.
People of all sizes, all shapes, all ages, all abilities, all genders experience body shaming. However, right, when we're consistently focusing on the people who have the least experience with structural discrimination.
Which is funny because now we're going, it should be for everybody, but, we gotta give the people who we think are less oppressed the, smaller slice of the pie when it should be on the basis of equalism. I get that there are certain instances where social justice groups are there to help equalize the playing field, particularly on the basis of systemic oppression. This has been a significant concern on the basis of people having enough, exposure or enough inclusivity for years and years now. But ironically, the more that we try to balance the playing field by taking away the focus from specific groups, the more discrimination we create, and then the more backlash we'll get. So unfortunately, although this may seem unfair, you have to really treat every single person like they are valid and equal, no matter where they come from politically or on the basis of their oppression, or, whether they're not oppressed enough or not fat enough or whatever. You have to treat everybody equally to create equalism. And that might mean that, some people who have a history of having life better will have to just live on that equal playing field with everybody else, which some people might have an issue with. Some people might not want people who've already had rights for a significant sum of time to have rights in future that are equivalent to that of, the people who've had more oppression throughout their lives. But I think that creating equalism, blanket equalism, males, females, all genders, all whatever, all races, all weights, all whatever isms, all sexes, it doesn't matter. If you create equalism, just blanket equalism for everybody, then there will be really only the opinions of individuals to fight against, because everybody will be treated equal. That's my opinion. I know it's a little unforgiving, because then it kind of belittles the points of people who've been in oppressed groups for a long amount of time, and obviously, like, I obviously don't come from the most oppressed group, like, duh. But that is on the basis of also what you're comparing, because as much as I'm like white or something, I could also say, oh well, single parent, grew up super poor, fearful of, financial instability for the entirety of my life, and then also like a woman or something, if that were a concern. Like, you can just argue anything, and I don't really like the idea of weaponizing specific physical features and characteristics, even backgrounds, just because it doesn't really help the argument in the moment, when we're having this conversation about being all encapsulating on the basis of accepting each other's bodies, and also trying to accept everyone on the basis of their body no matter what the circumstance. So when you're worried about your movement getting hijacked, you might actually be creating a bigger problem for your movement, because at the end of the day, like, if you want to be a social justice group, and if you want to be open to everybody, you have to be open to everybody, and everybody speaking their mind in that group. You can't gatekeep it. Otherwise, you might just create some level of gatekeeping for the movement, and then more people will take issue with it. Especially when it comes to political groups and social justice groups, you want to get the entirety of society to go along with this group. You have to make it open for everybody. Otherwise, you're going to create, people who just are not into it on the basis of it not fitting them, not fitting, accepting them, etc.
End up doing ourselves a disservice politically. We have to really focus on who is the person who is most affected by this issue. We all benefit when we think about the person who is having the greatest impact. Third.
So, now it's like, okay, well, we have to focus on people having the greatest issue, and we have to focus on this having the biggest impact, or this group of people having the biggest impact. And then again, like, you're socially isolating other groups of individuals who might not have the same level of oppression. When you're trying to create this body positivity movement, you have to focus on everybody being created equally. And I think everybody should be treated equally no matter what, like, no matter who they are or where they come from, until they do something that's obviously, like, demonstrably bad. Like, whatever. But I think that it's really bad when we try and gatekeep it, even if it's to help, like, bring up the people who've been pushed down. Because, again, at the end of the day, if you're trying to make this social justice movement work for everybody, then you're going to have to actually try and make it inviting to everybody. And when you add all these extra rules and regulations, you can create that level of gatekeeping. I know it's stupid, because at the end of the day, you do have to have some level of objective when it comes to these groups, but something as vast as body positivity, that doesn't require you picking specific individuals, because everybody's got a body. So, I don't know, man.
As body positivity eclipsed fat activism, the question of the movement kind of went from, how do we create more rights and a life free from discrimination for people of all sizes, to, how do I love my body? Both questions. They
both kind of encapsulate the same thing, do they not? I know I kind of was on a tirade on the basis of, like, oppressed groups and stuff like that, but if we're just going to focus on body weight exclusively, we should be focused on the fat acceptance movement or the fat activism movement encapsulating body positivity as a whole. They're both kind of interchangeable. I personally find that body positivity didn't just start with, like, fat people. I think it started with people in the ED recovery groups, and a lot of those people are not super morbidly obese or morbidly obese. People who are victims of disability, burns, maybe, unique looks or characteristics that might not be considered societally, like, desirable. Stuff like that. I think that that also has been what's perpetuated the body positivity movement to even grow in general, because everybody's got insecurities, and then everybody can latch on to body positivity. It's not exclusive to fat acceptance.
Are very important, but in isolation, right, the question of how do I love my body is not complete. How can we think about this not just as an individual experience, but as kind of a collective one? And the way that we do that is we sort of start to think about, again, who are the people who are experiencing the greatest impact of discrimination based on body?
See, I personally just find this ironic. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to keep interrupting and be a jerk, but I personally find it incredibly ironic when we're going like, well, this is supposed to be collective change and it's supposed to be for everybody, but then we have to pick the most oppressed bodies and the most oppressed individuals in our movement and the fattest people in our movement because like they're oppressed the most, when in reality you're just going to be pushing other people down to bring them up, which won't help your movement. Like, I don't think it's going to be helpful in general for the movement. I could be incorrect. Like, I'm not the best when it comes to being politically versed or versed when it comes to social justice. You know, I'm ignorant towards many things, and I'm not trying to like act like, oh yeah, like you can't have somebody who's this fat be in your movement or something like that. But I personally think that the more rules that we add and the more like gatekeeping we have involved and the more we talk like this, the less it's going to make any sense to most of the people you're trying to get into this movement. And also just the general public. Like, if you want the public to be enticed by your movement or go along with what you say, you can't add this weird gatekeeping bullshit. You've got to make it, you know, for everybody, every group, you know, the straight, white, fit male, like, you gotta make it work for everybody. When you start adding in all these rules, again, you're gonna leave people out, and then it's not gonna let your movement grow as much as it could. And that's all because you can't just break your ego down for 10 seconds and think about the fact that what would you rather have? If you're trying to make this a political movement, the number one thing you want is numbers. Like, how many people are you going to get on your bandwagon? Get as many as possible. Make it applicable to as many people as possible. Don't restrict people. That's going to be what's going to get you to win in the end. That's why I think that Virgie Tovar is kind of like a laughingstock. It's just too much. Like, it's too much cringe, in my opinion, which I know I say, you know, I know I make a cringe compilation every 10 seconds, but I just think that there's a better approach for most of these things when it comes to political movements and social justice, and that is breaking down the concept of gatekeeping. And ironically, it's like, these people always fight fire with fire. Like, they try to stop gatekeeping by adding in more gatekeeping for their movement, and then everybody just gatekeeps their movements. And it's good to have an identity for a movement, but for something as vast and as subjective as, you know, body positivity and fat acceptance, you can literally make it encapsulate anything. Anything. So I just think it's stupid. I just think it's silly goose pop work, bro. And I don't think it works. I don't think it works.
And when we kind of think about that, we expand our frame of reference and our political power and our political might beyond just one person to something that can have this extraordinary ripple effect on a cultural level. And finally,
you can do that with literally anybody. You can do that with as many people as you want in society. You don't have to add more hoops to jump through. This is the one thing I don't understand is, like, when it comes to social justice, I feel like you can make it so much more accessible making this a social justice movement if you just made it accepting for everybody and you didn't add weird shit into the mix, you know? I don't know. I'm very nitpicky, though, because I don't really believe in making body positivity or fat acceptance a movement. I really don't believe in making body positivity a movement, because I personally just find it should be something that we all can openly talk about. We can accept each other for our flaws, strive to be healthy and take care of our bodies, and then also just learn to live with some of those flaws that we have. Like, we're not going to be perfect, you know? Perfection doesn't exist. We should always just endeavor to take care of ourselves and be well, and love ourselves for who we are, and always strive to do better in life. Like, I don't think body positivity should be like a social justice movement or a political movement. I think it should be just your self-focus on your own well-being and development and your perception of yourself.
Body positivity, body justice is not about slogans. It's about collective change.
I'm sorry I keep interrupting her, but like the whole concept of like, you know, collective change, wanting everybody to change. Why do you worry so much about people judging you in society, so much so that you have to change the way people look at you or, you know, bring people onto your movement that has only to do with your self-perception? It only has to do with your perception of your body. It doesn't really matter what people think of you. People can hate you for anything. People can hate the way that you look. It doesn't matter. Everybody can think that you're ugly as a bucket of dead ducks, you know? Everybody can think that you are mortal swine, disgusting in every capacity, and why should you care? The reality is, why should you care as long as you have your loved ones who surround you and you care for yourself? I just don't understand how petty and how materialistic and how vanity-riddled we all have to be to think that the world and all the people that surround us and all the people who have actual issues in their lives, like trying to pay their rent, trying to take care of their families, trying to live their lives, keep their jobs, like trying to live, you know, that they should be focused and worried about you, the way you look, and the way that other people look. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't understand how this became a political movement. The only thing I can suspect is that people didn't like being judged and or they didn't like being treated like they were different because they were fat. So they wanted to create a movement to justify their poor behavior, their poor health, and they wanted people to accept them or bend the knee to them on the basis of the way they looked because they felt like they deserved it, or they wanted to appeal to their ignorance and delusion in order to live the way they wanted to live without feeling judged. When in reality, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares that much about you. I'm not trying to be mean when I say that. Like, if I were walking down the street, 99.9% of people will not give two fucks about me. Even if I get hit by a car, most people will not care. People die every single day, and nobody thinks about it, and nobody gives a fuck unless they're there to watch it happen. So I just don't think that people need to worry about this kind of thing. Like, it's so insignificant and unimportant.
People who are interested in body justice to really think about whether the actions that they're taking is about putting a hashtag on something or wearing a piece of clothing that says something, or if it's really about creating change that really needs to happen so that people can live full lives and thrive.
I'm sorry, I really just don't believe this kind of thing. Like, I think that when it comes to body justice, like, I'm not focused on justifying my body for what it is to other people. I'm also not focused on the well-being of other people who are just focused on the way that their body looks. People say the fat acceptance movement isn't about health. It's not about your physical embodiment on a health basis, so it's exclusively to do with how you look then by their logic. So in that instance, I don't care what other people look like, and I really don't care what people think I look like. And I think a lot of other people are in the same boat. Like, why should we waste our time on a social justice movement that literally is just exclusively focused on physical bodies? Like, I think other people have bigger focuses, like other forms of systemic oppression, coming from foreign countries, the oppression that can come from certain countries, political policies, even just like financial instability, increasing the number of jobs, helping people who are financially at risk, single parents, you know, poor kids. Like why would I focus on this and body positivity and fat acceptance when there are other things that are just more important? Like, especially when we're just focusing on physical bodies. Like, we're not focused on anything else. It's literally just the way that you look. So, body positivity is just about the way that you look. It's about you having a negative self-perception of yourself. I really cannot find it in any other way to be applicable in most cases when it comes to most, like, professional environments. I really don't see that much more to it. Maybe I'm wrong, but personally, I think there are just other more important focuses in life, and that's why this movement is just gonna be some online little, I don't know, circle jerk, basically. And that's just my opinion. I don't know, I could be wrong, so tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think about Virgie Tovar? And what do you think about all this? And yeah, that's the video, my people, so I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. It has been lovely. Slater.